In this video, we're gonna show you how even when the worst case scenario happens in real estate investing, you can still come out ahead. Okay, so I'm with Star Agent Andrew Greco. We're standing outside one of his investment properties on the Hamilton Mountain. It's a beautiful area, it's a beautiful property, but unfortunately the worst case scenario happened, which was he got a bad tenant that unfortunately destroyed the inside of the home. So what kind of happened here, Andrew?
So yeah, it's a beautiful property. One of the reasons I love buying it, right beside a park, great size lot. It's an upstairs apartment with an in-law suite downstairs. Had a tenant here for about 4 years, and then stuff just kind of went downhill. Payments became none.
Stopped.
Yeah, and the downstairs tenant actually left shortly after that because of the tenant we had above.
So you're renting both units out?
It was rented both units out, yeah.
You bought it, I think you said early 2019?
Yeah, April 2019, and it's been rented ever since.
They were paying rent, everything was fine?
Everything was fine, just the beginning of this year, right at the beginning of this year, things just went awry, and they just stopped paying upstairs, and that was it.
Do you know what happened? Was it something that happened personally in her life that went
There was
downhill?
a couple things that happened, but you know, it just kind of went. She was a good tenant for the most part, other than being a little bit on the dirtier side.
Yeah.
And everything was fine, and then just.
Yeah. So we're gonna, you might already be seeing footage as we speak about this of the inside of the home. It obviously got kind of destroyed, but the big idea with this video is Andrew still actually came out ahead with this investment, even though it's kind of emotionally shocking.
Yeah, it's been a stressful year.
It's been stressful, it sucks. This happened to me before. It's the worst case scenario with investing, but for the case of myself and Andrew, we actually still came out ahead with these properties, even when the worst thing happens, aside from maybe the house burning down. So we're gonna walk through the house, show you everything, and show you how Andrew still came out ahead after all this.
As you can see here, there's a nice door in the front. This is actually the original door. I've taken one of the doors from the back to the front. This has been, unfortunately, not broken into, but the cops had to bust in a couple times throughout the tenancy of the last year. Nothing really works. One of the interesting parts of the year, that's for sure. The calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then we have the living room. So everything's basically been destroyed. All the furniture, everything that is not mine, has been just been toppled over and destroyed. There's no other words to say it. It's very interesting to see it like this.
So you have to clear all this stuff out.
This is all on me. Yeah, this is all on me. I'm gonna have to get a bin, hire somebody, or do it myself, and definitely wear a lot of gloves and shovels, and just kind of throw everything in the garbage.
So how did you eventually get the tenants out of here?
So we went through the landlord-tenant board in February. We sent through. They weren't paying. So February we sent it through with the paralegal, and we got a date of October 12th. So decent amount of time to wait, and really in between can't do much.
So that's what, 8 months?
About 8 months. And the process could have taken longer too. I mean, it's once you get the actual tribunal date, if you win at tribunal, then you have to do, then the, I don't know if it's the judge or whatever is the tribunal, you know, they have to now send you a form saying that yes, you have won, and that can take 3 weeks to a month. And then once they get that form, then you have to give it to the tenant, and then they have 11 days to pay up the arrears, and so they can pay up everything and they can stay in. Or on the 12th day, then you can call the sheriff, which is done through the tribunal as well. And then at that point, you have, again, a 2 to 4 week wait for the sheriff to come out. Luckily, when we were in the standard form, we got the form from the tribunal. Finally, the tenant was able to just sign off and give me the keys back and relinquish the keys, and that was the tenancy.
And you were able to work with a good paralegal to help you through this whole process.
Yeah, having a good paralegal was definitely important. Helped me, with a lot of the stress, because this doesn't happen every day. And having a property management company actually get things that can help me with my case too, right? Like the property management company and the paralegal talk, and they go through different ways to help you get more leverage for yourself to help you when it comes to the cases. So, we scheduled 8 times to get somebody in here to inspect the property like you're supposed to do, obviously we've tried to do over the last year, and every single time they've not allowed us in. So we obviously knew things were really bad just by the fact that they wouldn't let us in the property, but you want to have inspections done. You want to make sure the fire alarms and things are working properly. You want to make sure the property's in good, it's in good, it looks fine. People haven't been, destroying the property. And, once someone says, hey, no, you can't come in, the first time, okay, things happen, they lie about it, obviously. And it keeps happening, once every 2 weeks for 2.5 months.
It's a big red flag.
It's a big red flag. So we knew that there was issues, but not to this extent.
So the property's a disaster. What's your plan now? Are you keeping this home? What are you gonna do?
Yes, when I bought the property originally, the plan was to keep it long term. And I knew that there need to be some things that have to be done to the property, obviously not this extent, but I definitely want to keep the property. It's a great location, great house. It just needs some love now. So the idea is to fix the front of the property, get the retaining wall and the steps to be proper and legal and safe. And then most likely still 50-50 on the kitchen, either just giving it a touch up and leaving it new appliances, but the cabinetry's in good shape, the quartz is still in good shape. So either blowing it up in here and just starting fresh, or just kind of leaving it and giving it a little bit of a refresh. Haven't decided 100%. New flooring, doors. There's a lot of patches in the walls that need to be replaced and fixed. Trim. It needs to be new lighting everywhere, painting the entire house. And then obviously the main thing is cleaning everything out of the house.
Yeah.
So a bid bin and
But a lot of these renovations, like you were already planning on doing, right? Like the flooring, putting a new kitchen
flooring,
in.
yeah. I think the kitchen was 50-50 at the time too, because it's not a bad kitchen. It's just not updated, but it's in good shape. The boxes are still working well.
Yeah.
Minus this one door here.
Yeah.
Which has to be
still
replaced.
is in good shape.
But it's still not terrible. But it, again, you want to have a better tenant. The nicer the property is, the nicer the property looks inside. Typically, you will attract a better tenant. As you attract a little more money for the rent, you attract a better tenant because of that price range, right? So that's kind of what I'm hindering on still right now at the kitchen. But it still has it just needs a little bit of love right now in here.
Yeah.
And
a lot of love.
A lot of love. The floors are okay. That's one benefit. The floors are okay. They're tile, so they didn't get destroyed.
Yeah.
And
as bad as it looks, like it's mainly cosmetic. Like once you get all the junk out, that's the biggest thing.
Yes.
And you paint it, fix the trim up. You can even fix like the little maintenance items here where you have like a busted cupboard door. But aside from that, it's mainly cosmetic.
A lot of cosmetic things have to be done. The property itself is fine. The structure of the property is good. The windows are still in good shape. So it's not like it's going to be a $100,000 renovation. We're talking about spending maybe 30 to 40, depending on what I find and if I decide to do a kitchen or not. And really the biggest exterior work that needs to be done is the retaining wall, which I knew would have to do, which is an expensive thing to do no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And that's a good chunk of the budget as well. But
yeah,
really,
like the actual damage from the tenants is what, 10, 15 grand?
Yeah,
worth?
maybe. And again, there was still 4 years approximately of good tenancy upstairs and downstairs.
Yeah.
So a lot of that money I still got back from rent over the last 3.5, 4 years, minus this 2023 season. But other than that, it's been good. So I still have a good chunk of, I guess you can say, equity in the property that I can pull from and use to renovate the property. And I don't have to go too crazy either. Like it's not like, I'm redoing the house for myself.
Yeah.
I want to make sure it's clean, in really good shape and functional for somebody and safe. But I don't need to make sure it's, a custom $50,000 kitchen. There's no need for that kind of stuff, especially for a rental property, right? You can keep it IKEA kitchens, Home Depot kitchens. They're still really good. They look great, and they work, and they're good. And then some new appliances always helps, just kind of update the place as well.
Yeah, yeah. So aside from paint, some maintenance stuff, getting rid of the junk, Yeah, it's mainly upgrades you were thinking about doing or
Pretty
needed
much,
to
yeah.
do eventually anyways.
Yeah,
right?
when I bought the house, I kind of knew there was a couple things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
Like you can look through a house anywhere you go and you can say, okay, well, I want to do the floors in 4 or 5 years. They're still original hardwood floors in here, which is still either way a good base for me to put a good luxury vinyl over top of, because it's flat. It's all, I don't have to worry about self-leveling or anything like that. And it's a good base for flooring. So at least I have that option. I don't have to like spend, $7,000 just to rip up the flooring.
Yeah.
Because that's an expensive feat to do. So it's a lot of cosmetic work, like trimming, doors, floors. Those are probably the bigger ticket items when it comes to the house property. Painting can be pricey as well. And there's a lot of painting. I mean, we're talking about the entire house.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty pricey, but who knows? Maybe I'll take that one on myself.
Yeah.
And just do a little painting on my own.
Yeah.
With a couple of friends that owe me. But yeah, there's going to be some money have to be spent. But again, I kind of envision that down the line anyway. Once it's all the junks out, let's see how it looks then, and then I can kind of say, okay, this is the stuff that needs to be done for sure. I can't salvage this anymore. I've cleaned out all the drawers and the boxes are, there's water problems or, they've destroyed it inside. I can't really do that. It's still filled with stuff until I get everything out in the garbage. Then I can kind of reevaluate and say, okay, now I know how much it's going to cost me.
Yeah, this is definitely the home at its worst, which we wanted to show. And I think we're going to do a follow-up video after all these renovations are done to show how Andrew turned this property around. Okay, so what did you buy this property for, and why did you still sort of win with this investment, even though this is emotionally shocking?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely emotionally shocking is an understatement. Still shocks me every time I walk in this house right now. But the real thing is, I bought this house in early 2019 for about $510,000. It's an upper unit and it has an in-law suite, so you can rent both out. And I bought the house with a downstairs tenant already, not an upstairs tenant, and that's where she came in play. That my client or my tenant that I had upstairs, and so I bought it for $510,000. I did refinance it last year. Did $140,000 out of that.
And that was with the home kind of in a crappy state.
Yeah, I mean the appraisers come through the property and it wasn't like this,
Yeah.
but it wasn't
Wasn't
it
great
wasn't
either.
well kept. It was not in good shape at the time, and I was still able to get that refinance. Anytime you refinance the property, you're gonna get a lesser value of what it's actually worth in the market, right? Because no bank is gonna give you a top dollar amount for a refinance. So they gave me a good chunk of change, and I used that towards. I knew I was gonna have to do a little renovation on the property, so some of that money was used to do that, and then some of it was gonna be used to buy another property, and it was. And even now in this state right now, where the market is not good, things are not selling, there's still equity above and beyond the refinance. And then once I do the renovation of the property, or change the flooring, paint everything, doors, trim, potentially the kitchen, the garage door, the exterior, there's going to be a significant amount of equity in the property still. As shocking and as stressful as this year has been financially, and having the stress of all of these things happen on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you get angry when you see things happen to your property, right? Like, there's nothing you can do. I was angry. I still am angry in a sense, but I've learned to kind of hold down the anger and look at the big picture. My plan was never to get rid of this house after 5 years. It was to keep it for 30 years. Have this kind of be part of a retirement plan. So I knew this stuff was going to come out. I knew I'd have to do it eventually at some point. At the end of the day, long term, I know as a realtor that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, this property is only going to get more equity. And even in the short term, right now, I already have a decent amount of equity the way it sits, and it's only going to go up as I put more money into the property. So as much as I was angered,
if you put the 30 to 40K that you're thinking about to improve all these things, what do you think the home value is going to be in today's market?
In today's market, I would say probably in the mid 8s to high 8s. And anywhere between 850 and 9, depending on obviously when the work gets done. If it was right now, if it was finished completely upstairs and downstairs, I'd say in that range is probably where you'd be. And again, So worst case scenario, someone's paid a mortgage for 4 years on the property, even though this year has been there's been no mortgage paid this year. So I've had 3.5 years of mortgage payments coming in covered by the rent. And so that's essentially paying this $30,000-$40,000 in a sense. So there could be a potential of an extra, you buy for $510,000, $850,000, you're still up a $350,000, potential $400,000 on the property.
Yeah.
In this scenario, right?
And what was your original down payment?
My original down payment on this property was $35,000.
Yeah.
Give or take a couple dollars, closing costs and stuff like that, but
yeah,
about $35,000.
And if you can increase the equity by, if it's gone up, let's say 300 after the rentals, like it still is a good return on your money. Obviously, it's been stressful this past year.
There's been some stressful parts of it, but I mean, at the end of the day, what job isn't stressful? I mean, you go to work every day, you have deadlines of some sort or something to do that stresses you out at work. This is no different. It's work, right? This is a business that you run. And I feel like, yes, it's been stressful, and yes, it's not been the best year, but at the end of the day, I can look at the positives and think long-term, this can still be a property that I can use to my advantage forever, right?
Yeah.
It's still gonna be a good property. Like even 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't screen as well a tenant as you can now.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many more things out there now to help you really find the right tenant. I was also a young investor. So it was, at the time, the money wasn't as flowing for me at that time. So I did rush to get somebody in here instead of waiting for maybe a better tenant.
This was your first rental property, right?
It was my second rental property, but it was my first in Hamilton. My other one was a condo in Burlington, and it was a very easy thing to take care of, right? It's a new build condo.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do much. Everything was new. The condo fees covered everything. You kind of just have to make sure that the inspection of the property was done every couple times a year, so that they weren't like, putting holes in the walls and stuff like that. But other than that, it was a very easy process. Where this was my first home, 2 levels, 2 different people, and it was going well.
Yeah.
It was going well, and then things obviously changed. But again, as stressful as it is, and as angry as you get during it, just gotta think of the positives. And most people will watch this video and be like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's scary.
This is a lot of things to think about but there's always a winning scenario when it comes to the property.
Yeah.
In my mind, at least. Some people will say otherwise, but.
Well, once you look at the numbers and the bigger picture, it helps you get over the emotional shock and anger of dealing with all these things.
Yeah.
And I know because this happened to me too on my very first rental property where I rushed to put the tenants in and I didn't screen them. And part of that was the screening tools that I use today actually weren't available back then.
Yeah.
Back in 2019 when I filled my property. So this same thing happened to me this year where I had to kick my tenants out, and we converted it from a 3-bedroom townhome to a 5-bedroom townhome, and we still came out ahead. But it was just that emotional shock of seeing the home for the first time in this state, and not freaking out and not trying to sell and dump it immediately, but survive it.
Yeah, people like my wife, people I know are like, what are you doing? Get rid of this house. It's only been bad luck.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's been bad luck for this year, but the other 3.5 years or 4 years have been okay.
Yeah.
Like obviously you're gonna deal with things like anybody's gonna deal with on renting a house.
Yeah.
There's gonna be hiccups anywhere you go, especially when you have apartment above and below, they might not get along, and that can be a little bit of a stressor. But I feel like if you really think about it, I'm an emotional person and I think of things emotionally sometimes, but this isn't an emotional purchase. It was a business purchase. I looked at it as a business. So yes, it's been stressful and it's annoying, and I've had some hard times over the year because of it. I think of, okay, now that it's done, I put some money into it. I'm gonna fix it. It's gonna look great at the end of it. I'm gonna get 2 good tenants upstairs and downstairs, and I'm gonna rent it out. And I'll cash flow again. Because what's the point? Now, let's say I did sell it now. Like people say they should. Okay, well now I'm selling at the low market right now because the market's not great. It might take a while to find a buyer. Then you have to find, when they close, and you probably get low ball offers on this kind of property because of the way it sits, right? Even when obviously it'd be cleaned, but even at the way it sits, it's still gonna need a little TLC to get it ready to sell. And then what? I sell it and get rid of a property that I'm never gonna be able to buy for $510. Like you can barely buy a condo for $510. So why would I get rid of the property?
Yeah.
It's a good lot. I think in 20, 30 years, you can tear this thing down and build something, right? And so there's so many different scenarios that I think of in the future. I can maybe convert the basement and take a little bit of this space in the basement and make it a 3-unit property, right? There's so many different scenarios I can do to up the value of the property and continue to build equity in the property.
Yeah, and once you go through this once, one, you learn so many lessons to prevent it from happening again in the future. But two, you'll never allow it to happen again. Like you'll screen the crap out of people, and you'll be very, very, very careful with who you're attracting by doing the proper renovations and then putting the right people in. Right?
And I think the biggest thing is now that you have, now that there's equity built, and I'm not afraid to wait 2-3 months to find the perfect tenant.
Yeah.
So I should say perfect, it doesn't exist, but a good tenant for the property. Whereas before I wasn't, I didn't have tons of money. It wasn't like I could wait 4 months to fill it. I found what I thought was a good tenant. I filled it right away. I didn't screen as good as if we didn't have the technology and all the resources that were available now. So those are all things I take into consideration. Now I have those things, I'm in a better position, and I can wait it out and find the right tenant for the property. Yeah. Upstairs and downstairs.
It's cool seeing how positive you are about the whole scenario.
There's been times where it's not been like this. There's been a lot of swearing in my car, and why did I do this? Yeah. But I think you just start, like I said, I try my best to be positive about things. It doesn't always work. There's always some negativity. I try my best in all different kinds of scenarios in life to try to stay positive. But because it's not as emotional to me anymore, I tell myself it's not an emotional, you don't live there. It's a business. Think of it as a business. Yeah. Run it as a business. And that takes the emotion out of me and say, okay, just like any business, you have to invest money to make money. Yeah. And so I know that I will clean everything up, get the renovations done that need to be done, and get it re-rented and get back on my life, having some cash flow back in my pocket.
Yeah, and we're gonna document it all, show the turnaround of the property. And this is, aside from the house burning down, as bad as it gets. Yeah. But if you look at the bigger picture, it can still be worth it if you have the right attitude. And I think the point you made about not being financially strapped this time around puts you in such a better position to make better decisions 100%. Because you're not just trying to survive. And I was in the exact same boat, and having the equity to fix the place up and re-rent it and put really good high quality tenants in has made my life so much better. But it was what I needed to do at the time to get into the market, right?
Yeah, and honestly, like I said, as bad as it looks, you want to buy a property like this for the price I got it for? Not gonna happen. Yeah. So I think about it that way, right? Like, I got it in a good time, I got it for a good price. Let's keep moving on and keep pushing forward.
Awesome, man. Okay, so having both gone through this unfortunate journey, we're gonna give you our best advice if you ever go through this or are going through it now. It's kind of very rare that it gets this bad, but the number one thing you can do is screen your tenants properly at the beginning. There's a bunch of different tools you can use. We actually teach Rockstar Inner Circle members all about how to screen tenants as part of the Rockstar membership. And then you want to be doing regular maintenance checks at the property. So quarterly to biannual property inspections where you can check smoke alarms, but also check on the state of your unit to make sure it's not being damaged and everything's going well at the property. You want to get in there every 3 to 6 months. Beyond that, if it does escalate to a situation like this, you want to immediately file notices for non-payment of rent, damage to the home, bothering neighbors, bothering other tenants. There's proper notices at the landlord-tenant board that you can file for all these things. If you don't know what you're doing, you want to learn what you're doing. We also have another class at Rockstar where we teach this. A paralegal teaches all the tricks of the trade and notices you should file. But if you just don't want to go through learning how to do it yourself, you should hire a professional. I think that's what you did, right?
Yeah, I got to a point where maintaining the property and doing it, make sure that I was doing it properly, became a little stressful for myself. So I hired a property management company. They're the ones, they take the personal side out of it. So I don't have to be the one talking to the tenants. They talk to the tenants, they collect the rents. They can set up all the notices if people are late for payments. They do everything for you. And they make sure that they're setting up inspections for the property. They're taking care of all those things, which makes it a lot easier. It takes a little bit of the stress out for you. Don't try to be a hero. Like, it's a business. A little bit of money a month towards having somebody really take care of that for you is a huge thing in my mind. It helped me a lot. It relieved a little bit of stress for me as well. And find, again, a good paralegal who's willing to talk to you, chat about things. And those two aspects, I think, will help you out significantly. Really set yourself up for success when investing in properties.
Yeah, the same way you might not renovate a home yourself, you'd hire a contractor. If you don't have that skill set, you should hire a professional, paralegal, property manager, who does this for a living. That is their skill set. So that can be a way to outsource that if you don't want to learn all this stuff yourself. Same way you don't want to learn how to renovate a home. And then lastly, I'll give my advice. What I ended up doing is to get my tenants out ahead of time and not wait for a hearing at the landlord tenant board months ahead of time, is I offered a cash for keys agreement. So I actually offered my tenants cash just to get out of the house, which they took because they had run out of money anyways, stopped paying about 4 months rent. And people thought I was crazy for paying my tenants to have to leave my home that they had kind of destroyed. But honestly, it was, in the big picture, the cheaper route, as opposed to waiting, 8-9 months at the time, which was the wait for the landlord tenant board to get them out. So I actually came out ahead, giving them money to just get out. The stress that was relieved from having them gone was so worth it. I think you tried the same thing.
I tried it many times, 3-4 times.
Yeah.
I was unsuccessful. Unfortunately, sometimes you get what's called a professional tenant, and they're smart about these things. They know how long things can drag on. But again, worst case scenario, it happened, and looked at the positive side of the end is now here. Let's clean up, get it ready, and get a good tenant in the property.
Yeah, it's all about survival in real estate. Andrew's a shining example of how to stay positive, look at the big picture through all these things. And it is actually inspiring for me to see you go through all this and still stay positive.
Yep.
So congrats on that, man. And
thanks.
I wish you all the best with this.
Thanks. We'll see it when it's all finished.
Yeah, awesome.